Hearty welcome to Vedic Voice channel for a discussion on how to get maturity. The concepts are based on the Hinduism. The Hinduism says life a great voyage from the known to the unknown. The sole purpose of this voyage is nothing but spiritual maturity. This applies not only to the human beings, but to all the living beings as well. All beings are continuously maturating, knowingly or unknowingly. The Hinduism says in each step of the life, with each experience, with each work the soul gets maturity, but the maturity level differs on the kind of work or experience the soul faces or involves. But, in many walks or steps of life the maturity gained is negligible, but the following four categories will impart considerable maturity to the soul concerned. Broadly speaking, the soul gets maturity in the following four ways. These follow, in the increasing order of imparting maturity, in general: 1. Sorrow and suffering. 2. Taking risks. 3. Contemplation or concentration, and 4. Spiritual practices. As it has already been mentioned, although every step or work of life gives its own maturity to the soul concerned but of course negligible, the above four works will give considerable maturity to the soul concerned. Amongst these four things, the first one, facing sorrow and suffering, is the very common thing happening in life that gives maturity to any soul. This usually happens to those souls that are not doing any other thing from the above four things in order to uplift themselves. After all, the life is meant for the inner growth, the spiritual growth, and when the soul is not doing anything to uplift itself, in order to help it, the nature acts as a master and drives such souls on the spiritual ladder by bringing onto them sorrow and suffering. This implies that sorrow and suffering in life are not to make the person just suffer or weep, but it has a deeper and ulterior motive behind it, uplifting the soul. In the battles of life, this is how the lower level beings, animals, birds, etc., are generally uplifted on the spiritual ladder. Just by feeling sorrow and suffering, and of course with all the smiles, these animals are pushed up by nature on the spiritual ladder. This you could observe in the wild. The wild animals get maturity just by fighting, hunting, or by escaping from the predators, or even in being killed by the predators. The fear, tension, and pain they get will push them up on the spiritual ladder. This is the lowest level of maturity imparting mechanism possible in the world, and of course the beings need not do consciously anything generally, to get sorrow and suffering and for this kind of uplift. Although it is the usual means of uplift of the lower level beings, this does not mean that sorrow and suffering will not invade the matured beings. There is every possibility that sorrow and suffering could attack any being, but this is the general means through which the lower level beings are uplifted. The second mechanism that could give maturity to the soul is through taking risks of different kinds. While taking risks, the inner strengths are brought out and the soul gets certain maturity. This could take place in the life as part of living, or the individuals could take risks intentionally. For example, when a thief or dog or snake attacks you, you could take risk to face the situation. On the other hand, you could go to a forest to catch a lion or a terrorist by taking risk on your own. Such situations will give you maturity, as these situations will bring your inner strengths out. One or both of these kinds of risks are possible in the life of any person or being in life. This is possible in the case of all the beings, not only to human beings. This happens usually in the animal kingdom, in the forests. For example, the wild animals are forced to take risks usually to save their lives or their offspring from predators, and this gives maturity to the animals concerned. The third one is contemplation or concentration. This is another kind of maturity imparting mechanism to the souls. While you are researching on any problem or thinking on any problem in life, or even if you are shooting or hunting, you will get certain maturity, as these are all involved with concentration or contemplation. This too could happen to all the beings and not only to the human beings in particular. For example, while a tiger is hunting a deer, or while a kite is chasing a pigeon, all the four beings concerned in fact in a way are in meditation. The minds of the tiger and the kite are fixed on their targets, and the minds of the deer and the pigeon are focused onto escaping. Thus all these four beings are in meditation in a sense. Consequently, this gives them maturity. Now, the final one is the spiritual practice. As you know well, this is the direct way for the spiritual growth, the inner blooming. There are different forms of spiritual practices, meditation, prayer, chanting the names of God, and Eastern yoga being some prominent examples. Even helping other persons or being selflessly is a kind of spiritual practice according to the Hinduism, and this too could help you bloom within. So, naturally these practices will give maximal growth or maturity to the individual compared to the other three methods mentioned earlier. Here it is worthy to note that, the last one, the spiritual practice, is exclusively for the human beings, as it is beyond the reach of other animals, evidently. But, the other three methods mentioned before could apply equally well to the animals, birds, and other beings as well, so as to the humans in one or the other way. Another point to note is that, the first one is entangled only with pain or sorrow, but, the others three could fetch you happiness as well. So, in general, the possible means of getting maturity are these: to take calculated risks, to concentrate or contemplate, as in shooting, hunting, fishing, researching, etc., and to get involved in spiritual practices, the last one being the best. The Hinduism claims that the sole purpose of life is to grow within, and the wise people naturally focus on growing within, abandoning the worldly affairs, and consequently they cling only to the spiritual practices, keeping themselves away from the society, thereby utilizing the valuable human life to its full. Only the idiotic people struggle in the world, racing after the mundane things, but the wise people struggle only for the divine. Do you like this video? Please write your comments below and share this video on your social networks. Thank you for watching.